Nataraja with Ascended Heart Navigators, and I am speaking with Amber Melindy of Shine On. You're Shine On Yoga, but you have a different name for your educational platform. So we're going to go into that in a minute, right? And
Yes.
then Hilda Montenegro Fix. She is a speaker and a teacher consultant in cultural agility training and consulting. I both know Amber and Hilda within the context of their own individual work, as well as a lot of exploring education. And the reason why I brought them both on to have this very amazing and unique discussion. So this is Ascended Heart Navigators podcast as part of our New Earth series, talks and discussions, how we're moving into and creating our new earth. So one of the aspects that I really want to explore is education and looking at our educational system and how we need to rethink that. So I'm going to first introduce, let them introduce themselves, Amber, and then Hilda. Amber?
Okay. Hi. So I have the last 4 years been working on my Master's of Education with a Waldorf certification, and have been teaching at a couple Waldorf schools as well as Montessori school. Before that, I had a healing center and yoga studio, and I'm an energy healer and a teacher, and really was feeling a call to bring more children education into my world. And so now I'm kind of at that point where I'm fusing my past reality of healing and wellness and what that means to renew the education system.
Thank you. And Hilda?
Hello. So my name is Hilda, and I am Costa Rican and live in Oregon now for the last 11 years. I work in cultural agility, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And with regards to education, my experience has been directly with my own child and husband and our educational journey. And I do have a lot of beliefs about how the new generations just need something different from what we were put through when we went to school. And it does tie into the work I do, because my work is about reclaiming our own power and our own voice. And so this really does tie in with providing the environments that make that possible for our children today.
Right.
And I could tell a lot more stories.
And so much more. And since I met you, Hilda, many years ago, you homeschooled for many years, and you also really dived deep. What I've always been fascinated for years that I've known you. You've dived deep into, as well as Amber, in very different models of education. And I wanted to kind of like look at the different models that you've, like, just briefly talk about the different models that you've both explored and what you've also incorporated in your child's education. And you as well, Heather, or Amber, and really talk about like what you've seen in these different pieces, and like what we're seeing today, and as we're like looking forward. So either of you can just jump in and
go ahead, Amber. I'll follow you.
I was actually hoping for, can you say it one more time, Natasha?
Yeah. So
education.
Right. So you've dealt specifically with Waldorf and Montessori, right?
Waldorf, Montessori, and then I taught with a co-op for a year, and then I've been homeschooling my daughter this year. Right. But those are my main experience with a system. Yes.
Right. And so and you've done Montessori and Waldorf, and Hilda, you were also looking at you were involved with like an alternative training, can you go a little bit deeper into
Yeah.
the system
Yeah.
we're looking at?
Yeah. Sure. So our trajectory started with when Kai was 1.5, and we attended a conference, a training on self-design, which is Brent Cameron in Canada. He had, the book and the school, and we had him and 2 other people from their self-design center in Canada come to Hawaii. And so they did this training for us, which was very much about self-directed education, right? So the center of it is that the child has this innate curiosity about the world, and that we learn all the time, and that what makes the most sense was to follow the child's interest and juice for what they're curious about, and then to provide opportunities for that to expand. So that really inspired us, and we created a cooperative, which you just reminded me of, Amber, when you said the word co-op. I'm like, that's right. We had a 7-family cooperative where we took these children, it was only about maybe 10 children, and they had just the experiential time in nature with one adult that would not only hold space for them, but just also some of our adults in our group wanted to share whatever they were passionate about, with the children. But it was done in a very non-didactical way, but more experiential and by invitation, and by being in a just in nature. In Hawaii, it's so easy to just go to the beach or go walk in the forest, right? So that was very interesting because it gave us the opportunity to explore what is it like to create something that resonates with your heart for your children as a group, as a small community. So it brought all those elements of, we all believed in children's freedom, in children's wisdom, and in how to foster a space that was collective, right? That worked for everyone, and where everybody had participation and voice. And that it was responsive to the children's needs and desires. And then we did that for a year and a half. And then by the end of that time, we were also having meetings with the parents, trying to decide, are we becoming a school? Are we an unschooling school? Are we a discovery center? So it was really a learning journey by doing that experience. And then 2008 came, and everybody went different ways. So then we moved on, we came here, and Kai had attended a Waldorf and a Montessori preschool just for a few hours. And we loved both of those, systems, because again, they're just respectful of the individual. They're loving, they're holistic, so different from mainstream education. But interestingly, probably the parents had more of that wish for Kai, and the son himself wanted to be in mainstream school and just wanted to be with other kids. So when we came to Oregon, we followed this interesting path. We unschooled for 1 year, and we homeschooled for another year. And then for 6th grade, Kai chose to go to the middle school. He wanted to be with 600 other kids. And so we allowed that. But within our family, we hold always a space for what is true in Kai's journey, and how do we as parents, sometimes clash with it because we have other ideas, and figure out the way to allow, the most healthy, I would say, combination. And I'll talk some more later, just to not take so much time right now.
Before I pass the baton on to Amber, as far as the systems like the Waldorf education and Montessori, as well as the co-op, I have a question about how your co-op was organized, Hilda. Was there a hired teacher, or is it the parents would rotate?
Yeah, so we had only the parents, because we had all of us had attended that conference.
Okay.
That talked about self-directed education. And so we were definitely steering away from teacher, school, and that sort of terminology. Okay. We're like, let's just do this cooperative. So it was all of us. And that's why I said that each one of us had things that we were passionate about. Like there was somebody there who wanted to do cutting and gluing and coloring things. Somebody else that just wanted to go take the kids on hikes. Somebody who wanted to teach them, here's how we care for the chickens in the farm and things like that. So,
okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. And Amber, your experience, like as far as like the structural system of the co-op and the homeschooling, and your Montessori and the Waldorf education, can you elaborate about like what was the framework for and you don't have to go into like huge detail, but what the frameworks were and what the differences of your experiences with those.
Sure. So I enjoy what you say about the co-op. And I think that each of these systems, Montessori, Waldorf, the cooperative, we're always trying to hold that structure of what you explain, of seeing each child and each holding their full potential always, and trusting in not only giving information or sharing information as an adult, but always listening and following the child's flow. And I think that each of these systems, especially the Waldorf system and Rudolf Steiner's body of work, as well as Maria Montessori, she's amazing. And I think a lot of others, like your parent co-op, it sounds just like that. Everybody was a true guide. So I think that so much of education rests in the person who is doing the education and what that means to them. Their concept of to educate that actual word means to draw out or pull out. So to bring something out of the child, not necessarily put things into the child, which is, I think, where we get into a lot of trouble. And so even these systems like Montessori and Waldorf that can be very, very beautiful systems, you have to remember what the people who channeled that information, they knew what it took to be a true guide. And so they gave a map, and a curriculum wasn't necessarily, at least in Waldorf's case, their curriculum should be a guide map, and oftentimes that can become dogmatic as well. And so I think the true essence of true education is holding a space of a guide that knows how to flow and hold a balance between structure and flow, and looking to each child to support present moment and where you're going with goals and intentions. And I think now recently I've been just feeling that my work might lie more with parents, and because if we don't have the true guidance of the parent, then like that's where it starts, right? And so I think that COVID and what is happening in our world is really pulling it back. A lot of people haven't had to take up the education of their children, which has proved to be very difficult in a lot of cases. But some have taken it on and is helping, I think, us usher in this next phase of, or next part of where we're going together collectively as healed and whole, holistic and mindful adults who are thinking 7 generations ahead, as well as being mindful of the generations that we've come from, and honoring the present moment. And so maybe I didn't really give the structural element.
No, that's perfect. That's okay. Exactly, because that segues into my next space of exploration is I think that with a lot of people who are looking at, the public educational system, even before this past year, was seeing that the system itself was very flawed, and it was not serving as children were changing. And so what I would like to be able to hear what you both feel is, how do you feel like the children that are currently in school and those that are ones that are emerging are even like the public education, but also just like the structure of education it's not applicable, it's not serving what is like who they are and what their what the children's capacity is. I just wanted to hear what you as you're moving through and you're seeing it and you're seeing, oh wow, there's a different place that we can actually go that's completely if we look beyond these systems, Like their children are not being completely served to really bring out, if from my opinion, and I just wanted to like hear yours, because you're both involved in and have been involved in different exploring different systems. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about the the children now and the ones that are entering, and how it, even outside of COVID, like how the systems are not really um serving
Mhm.
or if even if they are.
Well, my perspective is that before and during COVID, like, ever since I started to pay attention to education, which was even before having Kai, I recognized that the mainstream system serves a few.
Right.
It doesn't serve everyone. So
Mhm.
it's not that it's completely, well, I'm not going to go into a value judgment. I was going to say completely useless, but there are people for whom it works, and there are many for whom it doesn't. And it
Right.
didn't already some years ago, but I think even now, what I feel is happening is that we're in this wave of reckoning, right? Where everything, we're looking at things, and the things that haven't been working, it's becoming really obvious that
Right.
those dysfunctional systems, which is beyond education, right, health and etc., it's becoming so obvious that they're not working. And so what I think is that it provides this opportunity for uh, an alignment with who we truly are, and the expression of that to be what we create from here on out. So in my work in cultural agility, I'm saying, look, it hasn't worked the way we've done it. There has been oppression, there has been inequities, there has been so much not using the potential that we have, right? And so if we've been through a little, not little, but a rough year where things are falling apart, let's take this opportunity to create something that will work
Right.
better, right?
Mhm.
Now that we have this hindsight, let's not create the same as before, because that wasn't working.
Mhm.
So in terms of education, for me, what always drew me, for example, Sudbury Valley schools and democratic schools, that really spoke to my heart, because similarly to self-design, it was child-centered, it's unique. And it really gave kids the authority. It wasn't just like, oh, we hear you, we'll take into account what you're saying. They had authority. In Sudbury Valley schools, the kids vote who will be the teachers, what budget we have. They have major say in how their school is run. And so to me, that is what we have the opportunity to do more and more of now.
Mhm.
And that from young children to older children, we are reclaiming our voices. We are reclaiming our power to create the new thing. And it's not just one thing. It's not just one other system that's going to work for everybody. It's a lot of different things.
Right.
But acknowledging that in our differences is the beauty of who we are, and that different things work for different people at different times. And
Mhm.
so I'm very hopeful, actually, that out of this chaos that we've been experiencing, some really good things are coming through.
Mhm. Right. And I think that especially now, I feel like what we are seeing is definitely going to be the emergence of more small, like, groups of people who are what's working for us and our kids. Um and Amber, what do you like, as if we're looking at, like, because I know a little bit about your program that you're putting together, and if you're looking into, I was like, okay, what can we create, like, and what are the different possibilities of creating something way different outside of, and even like even some of the systems that have been like the Montessori and the Waldorf. um what are the possibilities of what we can create within the landscape of what we're going through, and where we think we might be headed?
Great question. And I think Gilda actually has already kind of laid it out. And I think that it's exactly on point to say, to look at each person's authority. And there's actually a whole couple systems, human design and gene keys, that combines Kabbalah, the I Ching, astrology, and Vedic, the study of the Vedas. And that's just one system. So like we're getting this in a big way in a lot of conversations out there that, you know, each of us children have a voice, and that voice needs to be heard, and they need space to show up and be who they are, and there needs to be enough space for everyone. And so I hadn't heard of the Sudbury Valley school that you mentioned, but there's a great book called Summerhill, and it lays out the exact same kind of program. And my friend Jess Kovach and I created Rose Tent, which is a coming of age circle for girls ages 8 to 12. And one of the first things that we do as a group when we come together as a micro community is to create the Rose Code together, a code where we want a code that would allow all of us to show up and be fully present each day, and a code that helps us when we have challenges, and a code that guides us with just like the basics of being a human being, and how we want to feel. And we like brainstorm and we write it all down on a big whiteboard or chalkboard. And then throughout the time that we're together, it's basically social intelligence, right? And we haven't really made space for that in our institution so much, and really listening to different needs, because what I need is not necessarily what you need, or what the child needs is not what I need. So we haven't made space, and instead just again implanted knowledge. And there's a place for that, but that place has to be within a flow. And so it's not easy working with children, because they do bring up anything that you haven't worked on in yourself, and we get triggered. And when we get triggered, it can spiral out of control in a little micro community, as we all see even with adults. Right? So we need ways that we're going to work with that and show up for each other, and space and time for each person to step into the more teaching position. Like when I was a Waldorf teacher, the kids would come up, I would try to have them lead as much as possible, when they felt called, because we all have something to share. So I think that a lot of these systems, and even what you're saying with, public school system and it working for some people, I think these systems, when we look at, if we could back up and look at principles, like if I look at Waldorf principles, I can feel very much aligned with the basic elements of those systems. It's when we get in, we start to compartmentalize and categorize and mentalize all these things that we can run into trouble. But we need a balance. We need the hands, the head, and the heart all taken care of every day, and that looks different for everybody. So it has to be a conversation.
Right. So what I heard you say some things that are really interesting, and I'm going to try to like all of them. One was like a code, like with every group, the group itself writes the rules for how we're going to work in a group. And that's like incredible, because like, can you imagine what that would be like if, a group of students is like, hey, we're moving into this like learning experience together, and what is the codes of learning that we're going to collaboratively agree on how we're going to show up in this experience. Like, mind blowing, right? And then the other thing is when you were talking about like gene keys and human design, like at no point in, in my young adult life in school did someone like look at me like from an astrological perspective or how I move through the world. And it was like, oh, okay, so I see these different things about you. And you know what I'm saying? It's like, and there's like, oh, now I see how I operate, and I see the different aspects of myself. And I know, I'm, I'm more emotional, or I'm more drawn, or whatever, and how I can like navigate myself within a learning system, but navigate myself within a group of individuals. That would be mind blowing if we actually did that with children. And I do that with my daughter. It's like, exploring like who she is and what her signs are, and like what her own medicine is, and helping her understand herself within the groups that she's in. But that would be amazing if we did that with children, right?
Totally,
Yes.
totally. I mean, and even in that, so circle work, which is something that I'm really, invested in bringing to everybody, to everywhere. I'm part of a restorative justice across the state of Oregon conversation, and in my work in equity, diversity, and inclusion, I used to work. Interesting that you said the Rose Code, because we here had an organization called the Rose Circle and did young girls circles, right, and adventures and rites of passage, and so the elements I think that I'm wanting to convey is these structures that can hold our good intentions in place, of not doing a top-down approach or an oppressive approach, are, for example, a circle structure, right? So when you learn that everybody in the circle counts the same way, whether they're an adult or a young person, we're one vote or one voice, right? And that when you make, in a circle, everybody has a chance to speak, everybody will be heard, everybody has an opportunity to express who they are or what their needs are. And that when you make those agreements, I like to call them agreements, and it's funny because I do them with my adult groups, and people talk about ground rules or rules, and I'm like, well, let's call it agreement instead of rule, because I'm trying to extract the oppressive weight of the word rules or ground rules. I'm like, they're what we're agreeing to, and they could change. It could be that another time we need something else, or something that we need now that we might not need it in the future. So it's current, right? And so to me, what's at the root of it is like the respectful relationships. So whatever system you decide to follow, if teachers are not treated with respect by the principals, that gets passed on, and then teachers to kids, and kids to siblings or other kids, and that's how oppression transmits itself. So we can catch that when we create environments that are full of respectful communication, respectful relationships, and good communication, right? Where we make the time to attend to conflict. Conflict is a gift. It can be a learning experience. It can bring us to another place, but when we don't attend to it, and there's just like, we're going to do it this way because I say so, right? So that's what needs to change, I think. And then the ways that will emerge will be as unique as the people, right? As the kids and moms and dads, everybody will have this opportunity to express their creativity in their own flavor, in how their relationship is with their child, or with their little pod, or with their group, neighborhood circle, or little school. Like in any of those fractals, you're communicating the same principle of each one of us is worthy, each one of us is loved, is welcomed.
And Amber, you also had mentioned how a teacher. So I'm gonna like piggyback between Amber and Hilda. And so you had mentioned how a teacher might be triggered by things that are happening with the students, and how, like, even looking at that, like having that as a different, like looking at how a teacher or a guide is showing up in the stuff that they're dealing with as they're working with a group of students, and actually having that as an element of this whole like system, or whatever operate, like how we're functioning together, is like, yeah, okay, as a teacher, let's talk about like what's coming up for you. And what Hilda, what you were saying is like these systems of oppression between, like, the principals and the school board, the principals, the teachers, but like the conflict between parent and teacher, and I was like, okay, like not only are we guiding children, but it's like also us as the parents, and was like, okay, there's stuff that I need to personally look at, and as we are moving forward, because before it was like, just take care of my kid, you do it, and then I'll blame you when things are going right. It was like, okay, that you guide my child, but then I'm going to have to look at my stuff as I'm relating to not only my children but also to the teacher or the guide, right? And like that's, how different would our whole entire I'm gonna, like, our little bubble of, I don't even want to call it a system or a structure, because if we're looking at those different things, then it can't even be compartmentalized into education, because then it just explodes into the whole entire like dynamic of self, right? Our own self, and then the guide, and then the kids. um and can you both, like, Amber, if you want to like delve into that, as far as like, is that part of what you're looking to create, is this reflection of what as a guide, what does come up for me, and how do I deal with that?
Yeah, I think that is kind of the most essential part. So if we look at children's education, I think that you can't look at that without looking at adult education. And to me, that conversation is self-development. And it all totally ties into what Hilda, sorry, I was mispronouncing your name. It's Hilda,
Yes,
right?
you get it. Yes.
Okay, sorry. I think I called you Gilda before,
Yes,
sorry.
that's fine.
So self-development is key, and circle work is actually a key of that, in terms of not only your inner self-development, but then when you're working with a group, collaborating with other parents or teachers, there has to be an awareness of these basic principles of circle work that you're talking about. And unfortunately, many of us adults did not have, we came from a system that was a top-down system. And so oppression, not only is in the institutions, but if there's oppression at home, or there's oppression in your family lineage, that, that's why I think that all these challenges are happening right now. And it is a huge opportunity for us to really see the depth of distortion patterns that are out there, and to come together in new ways. And the circle models are the ways, because they teach us, first of all, they teach us how to find that respect in small communities, and make the space for each person. But beyond that, each person has to care about knowing thyself. And, that is, that is the way, that is the path. And knowing thyself is also knowing nature, right? So when we are in tune with nature, and that's why it's so beautiful that all these like forest schools and nature conversations are more and more happening over the last 10 years or something, because when we get out and we really listen to nature, then we can reveal our nature, and then we can learn how to respect nature, because it demands it when we listen. Like, and so then we can start learning that in groups. But one of the things that I've been doing, yes, is recognizing that I can show up and teach at a school and I can impact a small community of children, no problem. Like, or I can be with them because they get it. Like, they don't, they get how to work together. They get how to make space for creativity if they haven't been too conditioned, away from that. Or there's a lot of healing or pain that needs to be addressed, right? But it's the adults who I think need to learn these techniques, or as the kids are being held in this new way, there has to be a conversation with the adults, and for the adults, teachers and parents, to show up and to, if they, to begin conversations around what it means to live in our authority. Because if someone's not living in their authority, which is, I think, what we're learning right now more and more, then you don't know how to hold that space for a child, or anyone else really fully, for that matter. And Krishnamurti is actually the name that came to me right when you asked me asked us that question. And he was a great thinker. Krishnamurti, I have Beyond Violence and Education and the Significance of Life.
Mhm.
Okay, these are great books. And he outlines the basic fundamental principles of freedom and of life and of nature, and how we get to the heart of what really matters. And only until we do that, we're gonna still just have a lot of suffering. But more and more people are waking up, and we are holding new spaces where we recognize the harm that's being done when we're not fully showing up, or when we're not allowing another person to fully show up and give space for their voice and their truth.
I
And
love that.
if we're looking at Hilda, do you want to say something?
Yeah,
Okay.
I some of the things you shared, Amber, are really resonating. For example, the being in nature, and places for children to be in nature, and how the healing that's required right now for us to continue, and is pulling those lies away, right? Like showing what's not true, as we were saying before, what's not working, and come up with the new. But it's also about reconnecting with the truth that's already here, that
Right.
we are connected, that what harms me also harms others, that it isn't just what we see on the surface, but that underneath, I call it the 7 billion piece puzzle. We need everybody. We need all of us. Each one of us has our own unique role and contribution to life. And so for me, what needs to happen is just that we believe that ourselves first, that we understand how worthy and beautiful and lovable we are, so that we can bring that gift of us to the surface, to interactions with everyone. And that we have the saying that knowing is loving. And so when you were talking about nature, my husband and I always say, once you get to know people, you care for them, like, because you understand them better. It's like you put yourself in their shoes, and all of a sudden you have more compassion, you understand more. And taking children and ourselves to nature will help us remember that we are connected, that we are one, that the earth also needs to be taken into consideration when we make decisions about our livelihood and about how we do things, right? So remembering and caring for each other, for ourselves, and for the earth becomes something natural, becomes what makes sense, because we've slowed down enough to get out of the belief that we're separate, and that we're disconnected, and that we don't matter, and that we're not enough, right? So kind of that's the trick I see.
Yeah. If someone is listening to this, and they're and like what you said, Hilda, at the beginning, is like this is not for everyone, like looking at this as like in the public education serves, but for those people who are exploring and looking, when they're hearing this, then they're like, oh, that sounds amazing, but what about curriculum? Like what about like the subjects? And how, and I want to, and I want to be sensitive to your time, Hilda. Um, uh, if we're looking at how the world is changing, and especially, like the United States and the educational system in general is changing, how do both of you see um, like subjects and curriculum needing to like morph as well as just the systems in general?
Well, I can jump in. Or was that for
Both of
okay.
you. Yeah, both.
Okay. So that's a really good question. And probably like Hilda said, every child is unique and different and needs something different. So a one size fits all in terms of a subject or class or grade, sometimes that may be outdated right now, and it depends on the age, I think. Like as my daughter Willow, she's 10 now. So she's in 4th grade and she'll be going in 5th grade. And so project-based learning, experiential project-based learning is really powerful for us because she is a natural mover and energizer, and she loves to learn and she loves to explore life. And so, for her, she's always finding something she's interested in, and you can roll with that. I think that balance is essential when we look at a curriculum. And so Waldorf has this great expression of the in breaths and the out breaths. So the in breaths are bringing it, where we're more in our thinking capacity, and something that we would really need to focus on, whereas the out breaths can be more heart and open play, or create more creativity. And you can go into this for like an hour, but this in and out breathing, I think, is really important, as well as looking to each child. And I don't think we have enough time to really dive into looking at the subject matter and how can this all be met. But I think it goes back to maybe the intention, because when I set intentions, and I do it with a group, or I do it as a guide that I'm working with a group, it's what my intention is. And if my questions and intentions are good enough, which they always are, I think that can really guide us forward, is when we're listening, like making that conscious connection to self and listening to the truth through nature, our nature. Then we receive and can follow that. Anyways, that's like not even really addressing the question, and we could talk another hour about that.
This is not going to be the last conversation I have about this, because this is, I think I'm having multiple like in-depth conversations about certain aspects of things, but this is, so Amber, you and I will probably talk again.
Okay.
I have a short answer
You're
to
more than
that.
welcome to jump in and dive deeper.
Yeah, I to that question about curriculum and content, I feel that we, since the internet, I mean, really even before that, there were encyclopedias, right? There was knowledge, or content can be found.
Right.
So I don't think that kids need to be sat down to memorize things. I think you can explain things to them so they can understand, but what you want to do is stimulate their critical thinking. Right. So if anything, what I would teach kids is how to communicate, how to learn when you're curious about something, how to problem solve, how to have relationships. Those are the things that I think all parents and schools and any place where young people are what should be explored. And it's not like teach like I know everything and I'm going to tell you how to do it. It's like, let's explore this together. Here are some ideas. What works for you? So always knowing that each child is a being that has already wisdom and joy and passions and interests that are the vehicles for any more learning that will happen. That happens all the time anyways. So yeah, that's when I think the curriculum, and like we said before, even this school or that school, in the end, it's about what teacher was that child working with that felt really seen and respected by, and that brought out the best in the child, whether it was Waldorf or Montessori, right? So yeah, and it's not to discredit. I think all have value,
Right.
but it's so much more on the relationship than the structure, I think.
One last thing that I would like to just share that brings something to mind, which is examples in the book that I mentioned called Summerhill. And what they said is children who come to their program, because it was like where they would live and go to school in this community. And they ran a democratic system and really beautiful book and model, in my opinion. And they said that if a child came and had all this conditioning, you know, of how to, like the imposed knowledge dump, then it could take them a really long time to get to that place of being able to be inspired and find your creativity, find that desire to want to learn. Because I think, you know, a lot of times it can be tough in a micro community. What I've seen through teaching at some schools where teachers have really struggled watching them, and because they haven't it's a new time, children are different and asking for different things, and I think we as adults are sometimes listening, sometimes we struggle with it, right? And so I think there's also a bridge, right, that is really needed to kind of help expedite this process. Or, you know, maybe not, but the circle work is probably the answer always.
I feel like we're on a bridge, you know, we're on a bridge right now between the old and the new. That's my feeling. And I really want to explore, the new, and how can we start creating. That's what I feel deeply is the more we start thinking about how we can create something new and be more in tune with what wants to be, the more that we can really like move from the stuff that obviously has not been working globally within humanity, with our environmental system, our educational system, all these different aspects. The more we talk about it, the more we start creating, the more we start sharing. Oh yes, like, yeah, let's start, you know, circles in schools, or, you know, or let's like do an astrological chart, or let's, you know, talk about sovereignty and, you know, oppression, you know, and then let's talk about like how we're triggered as teachers and as parents in this process, and let's create something completely that we've never done before.
Yeah. You know, what I think is that it starts really close to home. I think that what's happening right now in that bridge is there's the fear and the love, right? And so my sense is that to find our compass and to find our responses to the various situations that are coming, we need to be very calm, right? And even to parent or to teach, we need to be very present and very calm, so we come from a good place and not that reactive place of, like
Exactly.
Amber said, that you'll get triggered on whatever you haven't worked on yet, right? So that is where it all begins, and that's where the change, I think, needs to happen. And I wouldn't say it's never been done before. I'm sure there are people who have, but I think now it's going to be on a more massive scale, because we have been pushed to the limit of what we thought was normal, right? And it's like, okay, so how about instead of being out here all worried about all these things, I go deep inside to my heart and find that peace inside and find myself and go from there. And so I think it's about slowing down, and it's about being present, and it's about deep, my new saying is self-care is revolutionary.
Yeah.
So the revolution is to start caring for ourselves in the kindest way. And through that, through nurturing our own cup, the love can run over to our children and everyone else. When we think we're trying to be the good parent, but we're stressed out and we're not taking time to calm down, we're causing harm. Even though we think we're doing it for our kids, being, you know, the sacrificed mother. So that's where I would begin the change.
Yeah, yeah, and doing it because we're on a bridge, but to be mindful and slow and not reactionary, and tapping into something, you know, as like what is, you know, and then allowing all of this stuff to come up and exploring new ways, and like what you said is like being calm in it, because we are going through massive transitions, and it's going to change. It has no choice but to change, I feel. So Amber, did you want to wrap up with anything? Because I feel like we're going to continue talking. I know I want to.
Same. Well, just, I don't know anything specific that's coming to me right now, but that it's been really inspiring to just talk with both of you and unpack some of this. And yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you both for making time to explore this, and I love where this is going, and I want to explore more. So this is Nataraja with Ascendant Heart Navigators podcast, speaking with Amber Melindi, and so I say Shine On Yoga. Can we say your program? What was your program name again that you're developing?
Shine On Living Arts.
Shine On Living
Connected.
Arts. Beautiful. Shine On Living Arts, Living
I'm
Connected.
kind of working on multiple things, but I think I'm going to make an oracle deck, maybe just of living connected with the head, the heart, and the hands, and a guide map for adults to support them in this.
Beautiful.
And I will include the links, and I'm also speaking with Hilda Montenegro-Fix, and I will include, because Hilda, you have your website.
Yes, it's celebratediversity.co, not .com.
.co. Okay. Celebrate Diversity, and I'll include links to both of your websites so people can find you more and find out more about what you're doing. Thank you very much for your time, Amber, Hilda. We'll talk again soon. Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Hilda. Thank you.
Lovely to meet you too, Amber.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Natasha.